Okay, so we just talked about when not to care about what people think, but George, Jay, and Caleb, when should you care what people think? What do you think? We just talked about half of it, but there's another half.
I'll be right back.
Because sometimes you should care what people think, right? But like when though? Like what would you say? Any thoughts? Nothing too obvious. What do you think, George? Huh?
I mean, you should be respectful of another person's opinion all the time. Even if you don't agree, you should still be respectful.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because you don't have to agree to understand. You don't have to agree to hear someone out. Like you could listen to someone talk for 10 minutes and be like, gotcha. Like I understand where you're coming from, but yeah, I don't agree. There's nothing wrong with that. So you would say that you have to respect their opinion. Anyone else have any thoughts on when you should care what people think?
I remember a little while ago we were talking, and you said, I don't remember exactly, you said something along the lines of if it's someone who genuinely has like your best interest,
Mm-hmm.
in mind.
I would, yeah.
Somebody who's walking with God. Too.
Yeah, that's what I was
Like
more
your
important
pastor
than
or-
best interest is their
Yeah.
walk, if they're closer to God than you are.
Yeah, I would say those are both good indicators. Because if they have their best interest at heart, like they do care about you.
Or
So
somebody that's
so
been through
they have the right motive.
whatever the situation could be before.
Mhm.
Somebody who's experienced it knows the ins and outs of it.
I would say that's important too. I would say probably the number one thing would be someone that actually understands you, Jay and Caleb. Basically, if someone says like, "Hey, I don't think that this is best for you, Jay," but they don't know who you are, they don't understand you, are you gonna say that like what they said carries a lot of weight? No, because they don't know you. It's like some random person comes up to Caleb and he's like, I think that you should work somewhere else, and you're like, do I know you? Like, so like you're not gonna care. But if I walked up and be like, hey Caleb, like I think you should work somewhere else, you're gonna be like, oh, why is that? Because you're like, well, you know who I am, you know a little bit about me. We talked about e-commerce, we talked about your future a little bit, we talked about these things, schooling, right? So you're gonna be like, you know me, you understand me at least enough to be able to make judgments about my life. What do you have to say, right? So if someone has your best interest at heart, they care about you, they have a walk with God, and they understand you, then I would say that's all those are indicators of like, hey, you should care about what this person thinks.
There's a difference between pleasing people and just being open-minded to other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Like a
even,
huge difference.
even
Yeah.
if you don't agree with what that person is saying, at least listen to them. 'Cause
Yeah.
even if they aren't correct in everything, there is at least.
Anyway,
I think that an indicator of maturity, though,
an
is kind
indicator
of
of
what
maturity, Tim.
I think
Here it is.
that's kind of with what Titus was saying. I think an indicator of maturity is being able to say, I will hear you, and then I will determine based off of what you're saying, based off what
Yeah.
I know, based off what other people have told me.
That's what I'd like
So I
to
think
do.
that it, we're kind of getting off maybe a little bit into just life skills in general. But I don't know. There's a balance in everything, and so like you should care because they're maybe taking an interest, but at the same time you don't have to feel like you're forced to make a decision in their favor or whatever.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to pleasing people, I think one thing would be like if somebody has something that you want, you probably want them to approve of your actions because they have something that you want. You're doing things to get what they have. So if they're pleased with your actions, then you're like, hey, I'm on the right track. For example, if it's like, let's say you want like a really good marriage, you want really good relationships, you want a really good career, like whatever it is, like if somebody has something that you want, like the marriage that you want or some aspect of what you want, then you should care about what they think in your life as far as that. And then like to some degree you should try to not like please them necessarily, but basically make sure that like, hey, if that's what I truly want, then I want them to approve of what I'm doing because I want that to be in line with what they have. Does that make sense? So that's another aspect of it. Any other questions or comments, guys?
Well, go ahead.
Sarah?
No, you go
I
ahead.
was gonna say when it comes to like caring about what people think,
Mhm.
and we were talking about like when you should care about what people think.
Yeah.
When people are criticizing you, they're you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like you said,
Yeah.
if they don't know who you are, it's still sometimes you can listen to people.
Or if
and
they
you
don't-
hear it a lot,
If they don't have
you've been saying
anything
a lot.
that you want, like for example, like let's say George has a little bit more patience than I do, I should care about what George says about being patient. Does that make sense,
Yes.
John in everybody. So like if Tim has a little bit more discernment in an area than me, then I should care what he thinks about discernment, not about everything,
Yeah.
not about kids and trucks and everything, but just that one thing, right? I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. Yeah, so what I'm saying is like caring about what people think. It's like, well, if you have something that is better than what I have, like whether it's a character trait or something else, it's like you should care about what that person has to say because they've made more progress in that area than you. So that's the thought.
What I'm trying to say is, but if you hear something like from different people and you hear the same
Yeah.
thing from different people, there comes a point when it's not necessarily caring about what people think, but maybe they're right and maybe there's something that you
Yeah.
can change.
Indication,
Yeah,
something.
Just because somebody says,
Mhm.
"Oh my goodness, I don't like your hair," or whatever it might be, there's
Right.
no,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no like. That's not a reason to be insecure, but if a lot of people say the same thing, like I think this is a character issue.
What's
I think-
it's like seeing a bunch of people that know you and understand you. If they're all saying the same thing, it's like, well, they do know me and understand me to some degree, so I should care.
I
Yeah,
do
sure.
think just one other thought with caring what people think and wanting to please people, don't make sure that you're not I think that when you care too much about what other people think, I think it's also an indicator of maybe your perception of yourself. And so you want to recognize first and foremost, like, yes, I need to listen to a counsel and I need to, be careful who I listen to, who I don't listen to. And that's great. But also if it's a greater insecurity there, then be careful because it's really a perception of yourself that may not be accurate. In other words, we all struggle with putting on masks in front of people. We all struggle with really being our true selves. Even with people that you're somewhat comfortable with, we still struggle with it. Okay. And so make sure that you're not just doing or you're feeling the way you're feeling, because a lot of times it's an indicator of how you see yourself. And so, in other words, see yourself as someone who is still growing and that isn't perfect. And by the way, when you realize that other people aren't perfect, and a lot of times other people are critical because they're insecure, okay? And so when you look at yourself for who you are and say, you know what, it's okay if I'm not perfectly where I need to be in this situation, right? It's okay maybe if somebody points out an issue in your life and you're like, what in the world? Or maybe you feel as though people are, being critical or whatever it is. You're not perfect, and that's okay because you can work on it and you can get there. And so don't be controlled. Don't have the wrong picture of yourself in your head. And I think really in a more simpler way of saying that is just be humble. Just be willing to admit when you're wrong. Don't be like, no, that's not who I am. Because if it's an insecurity, hey, the best thing to do about that is to just get it out in the open and start working on it as soon as you can. Okay. And that's why we need each other, right? Like if somebody comes up to you and, maybe they're asking something of you that maybe would put you out of your comfort zone, or maybe ask you to, or point something out in your life and you're like, you start feeling that way, anxious or insecure, whatever, get it out in the light, right? We need each other. All right. And so don't have the wrong view of yourself, right? Just say, hey, I'm not all there yet. I can grow. I can work on this. Okay.
On top of that, it's important not to think like what you said about I'm still growing. It's a very good way to think, because if you just think, oh, I have all these problems, or oh, I'm not good enough for this, or
It go
I'm
further
not
into
there yet,
depression, or
it's depressing. It's a slippery slope backwards. Like there's a lot of room for Satan to mess with that style of thinking. We're just thinking I'm still growing. Or I'm still learning more about God. Like it's a much more positive. Like I'm not done yet. Let's keep going. Than oh, I'm just not there yet. It's easy to get.
I mean, so many people are bound by stuff like that, and I feel bad for them because like I kind of can relate a little bit, but like I don't know, like to me it's not complicated. Just get it out in the light. Just be humble. You're not there yet. Go for it.
Knowing what God thinks about you helps a lot with that too, and like doing like a study on this is what God thinks of me. This is what God says about me. Knowing who you are in Christ, that helps with what people think about you, because ultimately it doesn't really matter what people think. It matters what God thinks.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, our identity, and this is I don't have enough time to like go into all this, but our identity is found in Jesus. Like that, ultimately, we can be secure in that Jesus is making us conforming us into His image, as Roman puts it. And so that's why I said, like, if that's your focus, it's like, yeah, okay, maybe I messed up and I'm working on it, and that's, like I said, we need each other for that. So
yeah. Brianna, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think about this discussion? Like, is it helpful? Do you have any questions about it? Like, as far as, you know, caring about what people think, things like that.
I said you can hurt yourself too. Like if you don't say something that you know you need to say,
Yeah.
like, it'll just hurt you, and it's not helping anybody.
And the thing with that too is
Right.
a lot of people will get bitter, like because they're not able to express themselves or whatever, like in a
Never had a
situation,
voice.
and then it builds up over time, and then eventually it's like, well, you never said
I didn't know
anything.
you thought that.
And then
Exactly.
it hurts no one but you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
so
a good
yeah,
point.
and that
That's really
goes
good,
to
though.
what I said to you about knowing what you want, what you need, what's good for you. If you know pretty clearly what it is that you should do, and you don't say anything, and you let yourself be abused or controlled or held back or held
Yeah.
down, then to some degree that's on you.
Yeah.
But as you become an adult, that's tough because you're like, I don't like confrontation. I don't like having to do things like that.
But I think you'll to me, like I'm saying this now, like to me, honesty, you know, they say honesty is the best policy. Like to me, being honest is going to get you the furthest because you're being genuine. You're allowing yourself to be exposed in order for growth to take place. So like in all these situations, if you're just like, no, like it may be uncomfortable, but I'm going to be honest. Like, and even in a situation where like, I don't want to express, I feel like they're going to get upset. Just be open, be honest. And I mean, if the response is negative, well, that's another issue, you know, that opens another can of worms, but
yeah.
Don't let people control you in that way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, all you can do is tell the truth, right?
Yeah.
It's not your job for people to believe what is true or
Right.
understand you or some of that. Like, just tell the truth. It'll get you places. It'll help.
And the truth does hurt, even if you're wise enough to get through it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sets you free at the
Because
same time.
growth
Because
hurts.
you're wise and you know it's gonna help you doesn't mean it's not gonna hurt you. Like you still have human emotions.
Yeah,
you still
sure.
have human mindset. Like
In order-
it's still gonna affect you,
yeah.
but
And some of it's because, like, in order to grow and make progress, like, you have to know the truth about yourself and what's holding you back, etc. So it can be all very painful. Because if you know that,
very far 'cause you're just attacking certain
Yeah.
problems.
I'm saying, like, if you know what's true, you're responsible for what you know. George, what do you think, George? What do you think about this conversation? Helpful?
Is it helpful?
You guess? What would you say? You have any questions? What would you say would make it more helpful for anybody? Nothing much. No worries. Anyone else? Caleb, you haven't really said much. You know, I want to hear you talk.
I just say from I guess it's
Tim, shut up.
from your perspective, just flip the lens a little bit and to see people like they're always worried about yourself. They're not worried about what do you look like or what do you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Well,
most
keep
people
going,
are
keep going.
selfish. You're saying, and they're they're not even thinking about you. Yeah.
yeah.
Just let that burn off yourself. Just don't worry about what other people are thinking about you.
Nobody has enough time
Yeah.
to sit there and be like,
If you're-
oh, like what are you?
It's
you
kind of
know,
sad, but
If
yeah, it's
somebody-
true.
Nobody cares that much
No one
about
cares
you.
about
This
you,
is
Tim.
being honest.
If
Same
your
thing.
somebody
thing.
wants you to change so it benefits them, they don't actually love you. They love you for who they want you to be.
They
For their
love
sake,
you
which
for
is a
what
form
you're
of
doing for
selflessness.
them.
So when it comes to relationships and things like that, so who made the comment? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But whoever made that good comment, like just now, you. Yeah. When it comes to relationships, like Tim, you made it. You were saying when someone wants you to do something just because it benefits them, that, right? I mean, it was all good, but I'm saying the last thing that was said was that when it comes to relationships, you just have to understand each other, where they're at, where each other are at. And when it comes to pleasing somebody that you're in a relationship with, it is a little bit different because you have more obligations to that person. It's more complicated, things like that. But I think the principles still apply. But in order for them to really know what's good for you and for you to actually take what they say seriously, they have to understand you. So I know, Brianna, I've talked to you before about how you have to make sure that you in your relationship, you mentioned something, just understand each other. And then that person will give their opinion and you'll probably care about their opinion because they understand you. But if they don't understand you, you don't understand them, whatever they say is not going to hold any weight. So I'd say that's the number one thing. Just understanding where the other person's coming from. It's not understanding the situation, it's understanding what they see. Because if you understand what they see and you put on their VR goggles, you see what they see and they do the same for you, then you're going to understand each other in the whole situation as a whole.